Good afternoon, 2022 Behavioral Neuroscience. My name is Eric Olson, Dr. Olson, and I will be your professor or guide for this course. I have studied behavioral neuroscience for, over 15 years at this point. I started doing undergraduate research at the Medical University of South Carolina, studying out transgenic animals respond differently to drugs like cocaine and alcohol. I then went on to do my PhD in neuroscience at Wake Forest University School of Medicine, where I studied specifically how drugs of abuse that animals self-administer by putting a jugular line, a catheter where they can press a lever and give themselves IV injections of drugs, how that influences the brain and their behavior over time, while we're sort of modeling aspects of the addiction process. From my postdoc, I went on to study the cannabinoid system, but I've also studied a variety of drugs, opioids, and other things. In terms of neurobiology, I traditionally studied the mesocorticolimbic dopamine system, how drugs affect that, and also how this pathway is involved in dictating the value that animals place on avoiding harm relative to receiving rewards. Here, I'll go ahead and share the syllabus here, and we can start doing a run through of that. So, this is, of course, an asynchronous online class designed so we never have to be in the same room at the same time. I believe this maximizes flexibility, is a very beneficial and effective format for a lot of students. I understand asynchronous online isn't for everybody. Hopefully this wasn't your only option. If it was, that is unfortunate. But hopefully I will make it as painless as possible. The majority of material in this class will be based off of this textbook, which you can rent online. I also have placed the first chapter for you in the modules, so you can see what the class is all about, and then look into renting an option rather than just having to buy the book at the bookstore. Know that you do have options, but in this class, more than my drugs class, I do reference the textbook a bit more. Again, I never quiz you or test you on any material that's in the book that I don't cover in the PowerPoints. 100% of all information that I test you on is going to be from the PowerPoint material, other than what is from the discussion articles and material that I'll give you, that is somewhat of a separate thing. I've already told you a little bit about my scientific background. I've done more than just be a scientist. I am happily married. My wife just accepted a job in Maine, where I just moved to with my family. We live here now with my two children, young children at 10 and 8, who take the majority of my time and attention. I also generally like sports and music. Currently getting into the WNBA playoffs, watching Sabrina Ionescu do her best to fend off mighty Chicago. She looked amazing in game 1. Last game, not so much. We'll see what happens later this week. Hopefully, I get to see another game or maybe even a series out of her. Although I think the chips are stacked against her. Chicago's a very good team. Also like all sorts of sports in addition to music. Similarly to my breadth of interests in sports, I like all sorts of music. When I lived in Denver, I had subscriptions to 3 different Oxford companies, including the one up in the mountains there, the one downtown, and also I had some tickets to go see something down in Santa Fe for their festival. But I have seen, you know, the only thing that I would say matches the power of opera to me is heavy metal music. You know, I've seen Slayer perform in an old church back in the day. Seen Meshuggah before anybody knew who they were. You know, but I like all sorts of music as well. I like jazz a lot. You know, especially sort of the fusion side of jazz, like Herbie Hancock. I like anything that John Medeski touches. I like bluegrass a lot. Bella Fleck is a favorite musician of mine. One of my first out of date, you know, out of city concerts or dates that I took my current wife to was a Bella Fleck concert. Um, uh, let's see. I like hip hop as well. You know, Run the Jewels is a group that I'm really into at the moment. You know, their energy and the poetry is social poetry that I think they convey is you know, really powerful stuff. You know, so I am you know, I like a lot of different things, and I am not just completely devoted to studying science. I am also a human being. In this course, in addition to teaching you content, I would like you to focus. I want to make a point of developing some skills. So one, I would like you to develop some critical analysis skills by critiquing leading edge controversial presentations by influential figures in the realm of behavioral neuroscience. You know, I'd like you to develop a, you know, just an understanding of the content here. And also I'd like you to develop critical thinking skills and an ability to apply research methods in psychology by choosing research topic that are related to behavioral neuroscience, performing sufficient research on those, and writing an essay on the topic. That's all sort of tied into the final exam, which I'll describe a little bit more. And there's also an announcement that I've already sent out about this, including a representative final exam question that is exactly what I'm looking for. And I also want you to work on developing skills that might help you learn to study, learn, and cope with academic rigor in trying times. You know, whether or not this is your last stop in academia or not, you know, you will be going through trials and tribulations that make you question your sense of belonging. So there's one exercise in particular that I will have you focus on with that I'll tell you a little bit more about here as we get into the specific assignments. So, you know, main content assessments are going to come through the quizzes, which account for about 40% of your grade. The rest, the remaining 60%, I think, is a lot less about content and more about skills. For your discussion posts, I want you to be able to break down and succinctly convey your thoughts regarding leading edge controversial scientific content. I see and acknowledge that me giving you multiple choice questions and allowing you the internet to look them up is only barely assessing content and not doing much else in terms of education. So one thing that I want you to do rather than just taking quizzes is I want you to develop test questions based on the discussion post content, not the lecture material, but the content that I give you that you will discuss. I want you to develop a few multiple choice questions on, and then you will be graded on the quality of those. In addition, 1 to 2 of those will be included on the next quiz. So you could even be creating, you know, the question that you will be tested on. The skill development is what I've already talked to. I used to do that and have at times done that as part of a scientific study I'm doing. Uh, we're not doing that this semester, but I still want us to do the actual main assignment that I found most effective in my study. So essentially, I've been trying to find ways to make an asynchronous online class foster a greater sense of belonging. This is a little different when we're never even in the same room together. However, I think that this approach that, you know, basically just sharing an academic narrative with me after reviewing mine and many of your peers. I have data that shows that it does indeed foster a sense of belonging, and that might help you develop uh, resiliency in your future endeavors. And at the very least, help overcome annoying things like imposter syndrome, which I myself have experienced at times in academia. The remainder of your grade will come from the essay assignment, which is again detailed in another announcement. Basically, I want you to prepare 8 total essays. 4 of these need to be researched, meaning that I don't even care if you give me any content that I gave you. I want you to show me that you are developing the skill set to tackle a topic and put forth a concise summary of your researched opinion on that topic. My overall philosophy here is that you're going to forget everything that I teach you. But if I teach you or help you refine your skills to teach yourself through research, that is what will actually benefit you when you leave this classroom. So that's what I'm going for with the research essay questions. You're allowed to have a completely different opinion than I did in class. And really the essay prompts that I give you in the other announcement that are already in the announcement section, think of them as jumping off points. So for the researched ones that you pick to research, I want you to pick the 4 topics that you're most passionate about exploring. They do need to be spread out. They can't all be from one module, so you do develop a breadth of understanding and appreciation rather than just only focusing on diseases or something like that, which I think we would probably all do if we had the choice. But so but you can pick any 4, and then basically take those 4 in any direction you want. Whether maybe you want to be a medical doctor and you want to go in a very clinical route. Maybe you want to be a religious leader and you want to go in more of a philosophical direction. That is also okay, as long as your direction is researched and involves credible resources that build a concise argument, and you're then able to convey that argument concisely. If you're able to do that with 4 essays, I think you've developed the skill sets that are really going to help you when you leave this class. The other 4 essays for the final don't need to be researched. They can be answered just like you would in a regular, I tend to use the word blue book exam in my other description of that. And what I mean by that is back in the day, when we had in-person classes more frequently, we used to give you guys these little blue books where you would open them up and write your answers in the blue book. So that's what I mean when I say a blue book essay. Just sort of an essay based on your memory of class content that is primarily regurgitation. These are not going to be as deep learning as those that you research yourself, but still give some sort of assessment of your acquisition of content knowledge. A more shallow level of Bloom's taxonomy, but more of this purple and blue level rather than up here at the red and yellow level that I'm trying to get at the research essay questions. But, still part of learning as well. But to make sure that we're on the same page regarding these final exam essays, which do make up a sizable percentage of your grade, I want you to turn in one of the 4 researched essays at midterm. I will then grade this and give it back to you. Hopefully we're on the same page, in which case you only have to prepare, you prepare 3 more researched essay questions, and then you're done with an A on the final exam. My goal is for everybody to make an A on the final exam. That would be ideal for me. I have no desire to see a normal distribution there. So hopefully we're all on the same page after the midterm, and then everybody can just knock it out of the park from there. The quizzes, these are going to occur every other week in this class. They must be completed by midnight on the second Sunday of every week. I understand life gets complicated. I'm definitely going to work with you if things come up and you can't make a deadline. Deadlines in this class are there to keep you on track, not to make your life miserable. It will be nicer to our TA to get these done in so that the TA isn't having to go back and grade like individual quizzes for everybody like throughout sporadically. But we are there to help you through this rather than there to make you conform to our specific schedule. So yeah, let us know when you need help and we will provide alternatives. I will also point out that those are timed. And the 30 minutes, it might seem like a lot, but there are going to be a lot of short answers in here. And those can take a good bit of your time. My recommendation on how to prepare for those is to review my content that I have prepared for you. And then think back to the learning objectives in that lecture. And then try to teach those learning objectives out loud. If you can do that, when you get to the point that you can do that, and it's going to take more than once, and you need to do it out loud. If you do that out loud, you can describe the learning objective out loud. You can most certainly answer all of the short answer questions very concisely, very efficiently. If you cannot describe or explain the learning objective out loud, you will struggle at that. So, I mean, that should be your assessment of whether or not you're ready to take the quiz. Can you describe the learning objectives out loud? If so, you're going to do well. Studying the book without the lecture material will be futile. I am not testing you on anything that is in the book that I'm not covering in the material that I am providing you. These critical analyses of emerging topics in neuroscience is one of my favorite aspects of the class. These will also occur every other week. For these, I want you to create a discussion post that should be relatively conversational and informal, like a classroom discussion. At times we've tried to have optional Zoom discussions where putting us all in the room together. This just doesn't work well in an asynchronous course and certainly doesn't benefit all of the class because people can't come. So I prefer to deal with this in the actual text discussion posts. But if you guys want additional live discussions on this topic, I'm happy to schedule that and do that in addition to. But know that it would just be impossible for everybody in the class to participate. Essay questions, here's a little more information of what I'm looking for there. This is all regarding the final exam. Remember, only 4 of the 8 essays have to be researched. I am fine with APA or Vancouver, or really however you want to format these, I'm fine with. Just make sure that there is an in-text citation like this after, you make your in-text reference to the material, and then it follows after the text with something that looks like this, so I can easily track down the reference material that you are using. Each essay needs to be from 350 to 500 words in length. Excluding the references, no title page is necessary, so we're certainly not holding you to strict APA guidelines. I am not going to be a stickler for APA guidelines. It is my philosophy that is somewhat of an archaic idea. Almost all people that publish regularly, like myself, use software now that automatically formats everything. So these days of like measuring margins with rulers and all this, it's somewhat of an archaic practice. It isn't really training you in skills that you're going to use. If you do end up publishing a lot academically, you will almost certainly use something like EndNote. Like I use a reference manager that does all that formatting for you. I just want to be able to look at your article and the articles that you're finding. I'm not here to nitpick over APA format. We've already talked on the skill development a little bit. Right, here are the topics that we're going to get into in our critical discussions. We're going to talk about neuroscience of mindfulness. Luckily, our TA knows a lot more about mindfulness than I do. I just like to touch on it because, there is a lot of, well, I try to cater to everybody in the class. And I mean, there are aspiring clinical psychologists in here that I think can get a lot out of neuroscience of mindfulness consideration. But so can all of us, who doesn't benefit from a little mindfulness meditation? Then we're going to get into deceit and optimism bias. Uh, After that, we'll hop into a topic that is a favorite or has been a favorite amongst students in this class recently, restorative justice. What does the brain say? Like, how is the brain set up to uh, inform about a mechanism through which restorative justice can occur? What makes us human from a neuroethological perspective by Robert Sapolsky. This is a lecture that he gave at Stanford that is a summary of a book that he wrote. So rather than reading the book and discussing it, let's just go through this hour. Essentially, he argues in the book and this lecture that the human brain and our behavior really isn't that different from many of our other animals. Lots of animals, have war. The one difference is our war is maybe a little more extreme. All animals seek sex. All animals engage in sex. Well, most. There are obviously examples of asexual reproduction, but less common. Anyway, the point is again, humans sit very similar, maybe just a little more extreme. It's just slight nuance extremity. And does the frontal cortex allow for that to occur? I don't know. This is a fun one that I threw in. I alternate some fun ones every now and then. But this is a panel integrating people in the community with neuroscientists, where they get together and study music, brain, and behavior. Also, a topic I like to think about a good bit, in part because I strongly believe that we communicated through music before speech. And I personally believe that as a result, music can affect us more deeply than speech even. And one of my man crushes out there by the name of David Solzer even teaches animals to perform music. Uh, he has recordings of elephants in Thailand. He has produced records of this that you can buy, where he is conducting elephants performing together and jamming with each other. My point here is that music, I think, has more deep potential to impact us than language even. So just something to consider a little bit about, like what is music? What does it mean to us mentally? Then we're going to get into consciousness, which is something I don't know much about. And I would also argue that I think a lot of people, probably say more than they know here. The experts in our department are Carly Leonard, Jim Grigsby, Vivian Shu. These are the people that can tell you a lot more about consciousness than I can. But my approach to this is to provide some very far out, fascinating views on consciousness, and then have you guys consider and digest that material from these people like, Hoffman, that are blowing my mind. So we'll see what you guys think about that. And then this really, well, then we get into the neuroscience of gender identity. So I want to specifically touch on that one. That is a panel of neuroscientists hosted that include Ben Barres, who he recently passed away, unfortunately, but he was a very famous transgender neuroscientist. Neurobiology of transgender identity wasn't his specialization, I might add. He studied how glia are involved in neural signaling. But He was a brilliant professor at Stanford and transitioned from being female to male. And I've heard him speak on that transition multiple times. Some of his most interesting writing on me actually is more about sort of the issues that he dealt with as a woman in neuroscience versus a man. Also worth interesting reads. But he obviously has done a lot of. He understands the research on the neuroscience of gender identity very well. He speaks in that panel with Eric Kandel, a Nobel laureate, and really sort of the face of neuroscience today. And with a few other panel members. And what they do is they describe evidence suggesting that gender identity is a neurobiological construct that is more than just sex distinction that you would get with XY genetics. And I want to also add that at no time is gender identity referred to a dysphoria or any of that stuff. It's still in the DSM. I understand that is frustrating to some people. So just know that doesn't come up. It's not even they certainly aren't advocating for such an understanding. And also just know that these are neuroscientists, the leading neuroscientists conveying the leading neuroscience on gender identity. What we know. We still don't know very much. Very little is known. And I can go on and on about hormones and how hormones are particularly difficult to study. The main thing is they signal over long periods of time. So, I mean, if we were to measure your hormonal levels at one point in time in your blood, it would be relatively uninformative. It's not going to tell us a lot. So we have a lot to learn about neuroendocrinology, and a lot more is said than is known. But all I'm wanting to do here is for you guys to listen to what a few of the top leading neuroscientists have to say about this topic, and then to respectfully discuss it amongst each other. I'm not here looking for a right opinion, or what I'm here for is to simply have you guys consider this very timely and relevant topic using the best information that I can find on it. Right, I do want you to be very respectful of each other's opinions, though. And most importantly, don't make assumptions about people's identities based on things that they say here. I will give an entire post, in the next few days about our expectations for having these discussions in an inclusive manner. And that is going to be one in which all opinions are welcome, but one in which we, critique opinions rather than people, and simply aren't making assumptions about others' identities. Then we get back sort of into consciousness and reality a little bit by Anil Seth, someone that I'm enamored by, and Oliver Sacks, someone that, as a neuroscientist, it's hard for me to get into everything he says, but certainly a brilliant person, someone that we should all be learning from in this class. But yeah, how do hallucinations, what can those inform us about how we perceive reality? And this really does, I think, get at bigger picture concepts that I would like you to focus on, which is, what is reality to you? What is reality to your peer? How different might those realities be? What does all that mean? And where does that reality coming from? Presumably the brain. But that's essentially the class. We will have these discussions. Like I said, it will count a good percentage of your grade. The essays and the research essays are a good part of the grade as well, as are your weekly quizzes. My advice to you is to get into a schedule, and you will do quite well. Get into a routine. I think that I've tried to set this class up so you can manage it around your other work-life responsibilities. But that's just going to go well if you find a way to fold it into them in that routine. And remember that we are here to help you, not to weed you out. So let us know if you need any help at any point along the way. We're here to guide you. Thanks for your attention, and I look forward to hearing you and your thoughts